Okay, welcome to joshnaga.net. Today I have a guest on video. Today I'm inviting my friend Mitz from California. He is actually, what are you? Japanese American.
Same thing as you.
Same thing as me.
Okay.
And he's been teaching in English in Korea for some time now. So Mitz, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. As you said.
Yeah, we don't encounter so many Japanese Americans in Korea. I only know you and me. Those are the only Japanese Americans I know who live in Korea.
It's very rarely to see a Japanese American here in Korea. I'm actually originally from Los Angeles, and I grew up there. But then I moved to the Bay Area and lived in San Francisco for a while. And I got married recently to my beautiful wife.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that's why I'm here in Korea. So we decided to relocate here, and I'm loving it.
You're loving it? Okay, all right, great. So you've been teaching adults?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mainly adults and college students. Originally, I was thinking about, like most foreign teachers who first come here, they start with elementary school or Hagwons.
Mm-hmm.
However, I decided we actually both decided to tutor instead, and we decided to tutor college students and as well as any adults who just need our services.
I see. Okay. And from what I know, you teach here at your studio. So what made you decided to start up your own business?
Well, the idea of working for somebody is always a little challenging, mainly because, especially in Korea, there's long hours and you don't have so much freedom, depending on the hagwon or depending on the school, I guess, to really make your own curriculum or to be different or unique in your own way. Also, we wanted to work together, and that's something.
We, as in you and your wife.
Yeah, me and my wife. We wanted to work together whenever we can. My wife, she currently is an interpreter for the government, and whenever she's not working, we tutor together. And as a result, it's been really interesting. Of course, the beginning was a little challenging to get adjusted to working together, but now we really make a good team because I'm like a Native American, and she's the interpreter, Korean who learned English. So she has a lot of really specific insights on how to learn how to learn English for many Koreans. And so as a result, we worked well together.
Mm-hmm. So you wanted that freedom of being able to make your own curriculum. Do you guys also teach together?
Yeah, of course. Whenever she's not working, we teach together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's an interesting. So the student gets to both Native American English and a Korean who's an interpreter.
Yeah. They're actually very lucky, honestly. We
So if they need, they can get some Korean explanation and feedback.
Yes. Yeah, we decided to do it that way because we felt we want to help people also more than just make money. We really felt like this is something we could really support people in. Because we're teaching a lot of college students right now, and these college students don't have jobs yet, so we really don't want to burden them with too much financial expenses, but at the same time give them a really upper hand in their English ability.
Is there a vision for what you're doing right now? Is there a long-term vision?
Currently, our current vision is to continue to tour for a while, and eventually want to open up our own institute in the future, and that's going to be another 2 to 3 years.
What I really like about this place is that it's very clean and very simple, and it has some good lighting. I like the big window right here.
Perfect.
And you get some sunshine. In this area, there aren't so many places where students can practice speaking, and when you do speaking, you do pronunciation practice.
Of course.
If you do that at a coffee shop, it's pretty embarrassing.
It is. Yeah, I used to live near Gimpo International Airport, and I used to always go to this coffee shop there. And this Korean lady, she would tutor Japanese businessmen there. I'm sorry, Korean businessmen. And they would be saying, they were practicing their English in the cafe, and they, everyone can hear them, and it's not the best environment. So So we decided to, when we were moving, we decided to get an office tile so that we can have a place where, we could have a place for people to practice.
Yeah, I think that's great. Because I get into trouble too. Like sometimes I get, I tutor students, and maybe we had to, find a location, and then we go somewhere. Maybe I live in Incheon, someone lives in Seongnam, or whatever, and we try to meet in the middle somewhere, and then we have to find a place, and then we can't find an appropriate place, so we end up in a coffee shop, and then please repeat after me, family. And the student tries to go, family.
Yeah, it's quite embarrassing.
It's very embarrassing.
It's embarrassing for them. And it's that's what we originally thought. We were, instead of teaching our place, we were originally thinking maybe cafe, like what you do.
Yeah.
But because we're still kind of small-time business, we're still a small-time business, it's difficult to rent a place, and it would have been financially too much for us, and so that's why we had this idea of having an office.
Yeah.
And as long as you keep the place clean, it's really nice. As you mentioned, not big windows, also the high ceilings, and we keep a very professional environment here.
Yeah, it's nice. Oh, speaking of coffee, remember when we got coffee?
Over there?
Yeah, over there. So what happened was the lady at the coffee shop was like, okay, so what did you order?
I ordered Americano.
Americano. So she was like, well, of course he practices Korean, and then the lady was like, 진하게 할까요, 연하게 할까요? And then he goes, 네. So she gets so confused. So she asks him again. She goes, 진하게? And then he goes, 네. And then she asks him again, 연하게? He says, 네. So
He told the story 3 times already, I think. I think at times, being in a foreign country, and if I looked American, if I was white, it would be a huge issue for me. I would say, I don't understand. But however, because even though when I speak, they hear Korean, they know exactly I'm a foreigner still. But I think they get the impression that I'm like a gyopo or like a half Korean, like a Korean,
Yeah.
And so I have this feeling that they expect me to speak Korean, and so that's partly the reason why sometimes I try to force it too much. And I understand it's something that I have to really just really be clear about more so.
I mean, yeah, but that was I had a really good laugh, so
I'm
justified.
glad that you.
Oh, by the way, okay, let's a little lesson here. So, 연하게 친하게, right? 연하게 친하게. So I think many Koreans make a mistake of saying a thick or thin. But what would be the better way?
Yeah, we talked about this.
연하게 친하게.
Oh, don't be okay.
Yeah. No, it's a your chance to teach the rest of the internet friends.
I see. Okay. In America, first of all, they don't really ask that question. Do you like it thin or do you like it thick? They ask you more. So they ask you, would you like it strong or would you like it weak? And of course, strong means thick, meaning that it's more concentrated. There's a lot more coffee in there. And of course, thin meaning weak. There's less coffee in there, more water. And I think that's a better way. Instead of saying thick and thin, say strong and weak.
Strong and weak. So that's how you say it. If you need to say it.
So for example, most Americans say, I love strong coffee, meaning that they love thick coffee.
All right, great, thanks. When you're teaching adult students here, is there like a common mistake that people make often? Like, what do you see? Like, do you see some patterns?
The thing is, it's difficult to really gauge the exact kind of issues with each person. I think each person has certain strengths and weaknesses. Some people are very good at speaking. Some people are very good at reading or writing, depending on the person. But I say the thing I catch the most is, of course, pronunciation errors. That's the biggest. Usually there's certain like F's and P's and pronunciation errors is probably the biggest. Also, subject-verb disagreements. They don't have the right verb with the subject and vice versa. And mainly just word order sometimes too.
Mm-hmm.
They don't exactly feel like they don't. I feel like many times they speak, but many times they don't really understand what they're saying. And I think the biggest actually is prepositions,
Oh, yeah.
articles. That's probably the biggest. I understand it's difficult. Honestly, sometimes even Americans don't understand where to put, a certain preposition or how to place it, or if it's a or an or the,
Mm-hmm.
and that's probably actually the biggest prepositional mistakes.
Yeah, about the pronunciation issue, like they're so concerned about trying to be accurate. Am I saying, do I really understand the meaning of this word? I think that's where they're coming from, and that's not bad by itself. However, if pronunciation is what you're practicing, I think you need to be able to remove kind of the semantic, the meaning part from the technical aspect of being able to produce sounds. So what I often tell my students when it comes to pronunciation practice is pretend you're a singer, or pretend you're an actor, or pretend you're practicing a music instrument, and just don't forget about what you're talking about. Just focus on the sound. Listen to the sound. Listen where you're placing your tongue placement and how you're breathing. So those are the kind of things that I go through with my students when I want to fix their pronunciation.
I see. That's a good way. Yeah, it's the same thing I tell my students to not so much focus on how to pronounce things. More so just be natural. Just try to be natural. Try to feel like you're an American. Pretend you're an American.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah, it's a mind switch.
Yeah, mind switch, and just feel it. And if you feel your words, just feel it out. And if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. That's not a big deal. It really isn't. And what you do is, if you do make a mistake, you correct it, but you do it maybe on a time where you create a certain time period, and then you really learn it. You really learn how to say that word over and over again, and then when you're back in conversation, it comes more naturally. So sometimes it's not good to think too much while you're talking to somebody.
Yeah.
Because it's they lose because if you feel like if you're unsure, then the person you're talking
they're
with,
gonna feel like
they feel a little awkward too,
Yeah.
and it's gonna create a whole awkward feeling with everybody. So it's best to practice by yourself or with a teacher or with a tutor, and then when you speak to everybody else with a daily conversation, you can speak naturally.
Yeah. Like the nonverbal communication is a big part, and it's interesting you said that, because if you feel nervous, the other person will feel nervous, and that's something just happens, right? So, but if you go there confident, feeling like you're American, let me tell a little. So on some days my Korean is really good. On one of those days, like I think in Korean, I feel like Korean. Yes, sometimes I feel like kimchi is the best food in the world. I usually don't feel that way, but sometimes I do.
I'm also a big kimchi guy.
So when that happens, my Korean becomes really good. So like my intonation gets like 10 times better.
That's true.
It's interesting. So I agree with you on that. When you if you're working on your pronunciation, intonation, then really listen and pretend you're American. So, which means you have to use your acting skills in the beginning, which might feel awkward in the beginning, but as you do more, you get more, you become more familiar with how you do things, and once you become more familiar with a certain material, you can become more confident. Confidence is built based on familiarity.
Of course. Yeah, it's a very good point that they said. And I've actually had an American friend who learned Korean, and
by the way, my Japanese name is Tate.
Oh, sorry, Josh.
I go by Josh.
Sorry, Josh. So I know this guy a long time ago, so I call him Tate, but I'll call you Josh. One of my American friends, he learned Korean. He married a Korean girl here too as well, and it was so crazy. We were talking in English, and all of a sudden his wife called, and picked up the phone. And even though his accent was American, he just acted like he was Korean, and it was just so weird. It felt really weird seeing an American guy, just like have this kind of Korean tendencies, like he would drag out his, like yapoyo, like that. And I was like, wow, it just felt really weird. But because he felt it, he really felt those words out. It came out much more natural, and I was really impressed by that. And I think that's really part of it. You just got to feel out the words, and just feel like just pretend. Even though you're not American, just pretend. and it'll come out much more naturally.
It'll come out more naturally. Oh, great. As a Japanese American living in Korea, and you're the only person that I know other than myself, do you go through any certain difficulties, or like?
Honestly, I think it's...
Do people treat you differently because you speak funny Korean?
Well, the challenging part is that because I'm Japanese American, people think, when they look at me, they think I'm Korean, or at least maybe a dual. So I do have, it's more of, the issues come more from within myself. I feel like it's more of the kind of, because you look a certain way, you feel you have to act a certain way. And as a result, I think sometimes I put too much pressure on myself to pretend that I'm Korean, and but which of course I'm not. You know, I think everybody has to really be themselves in order to really fully embrace and be part of the culture. You shouldn't really change yourself to the point where you lose your identity. You should never do that, but you should learn to embrace it. And but you have to make sure that. Yeah, you just have to make sure you really try to just be yourself. Just be yourself. And that's something that I'm always trying to battle within my own kind of mind.
That's interesting. You face that because like I used to work in a hagwon, and where I was a team leader, and I was also a hiring manager. I had a couple of different roles, and in a way, I went through the same struggle that he went through. I tried to pretend that I'm Korean, and so in terms of mannerism, and also I speak some Korean, and it just didn't feel right. Like my gut feeling told me that like it doesn't feel right the way I'm working. Of course, I want to produce the best work, but it just didn't feel right. So yeah, I completely agree with you on that. You of course, the problem comes within yourself.
Yeah, most of the problems really are self-inflicted, honestly.
Yeah.
And you have to constantly be aware of of what you're thinking and how you feel, and especially there's the whole stigma of being Japanese, especially in Korea, and just you feel like you're inferior because you still don't know the language and stuff like that. So those feelings naturally come, but you can't let them get to you, and you have to more just embrace who you are. And I think that's really important. Just embrace who you are, and just embrace the people around you too, and everything will be okay. But you should never feel like you're inferior. That's the road you should never go down.
So how can the viewers take that with them? So right now we're teaching them, right? We're telling the viewers, be American, pretend you're American, and now we're saying seemingly a contradictory thing, be yourself. So how can the viewers kind of like find a moderation between being themselves, but then at the same time being American, so that they can speak better English?
That's a good question. I personally am still going through that challenge, and so I don't have a sure way of defining what the best balance is. But from my experience with people who lived here, my friends who lived here, American friends who lived here, who were able to kind of assimilate to the culture, the first thing I see is that I think the first thing comes first is that you just gotta be yourself. Second of all, if you have to really learn to, if you really want to be a part of this culture, you have to really just, I think you just have to really just be interested in people. I think that's the main thing. Be yourself, but just be interested in the people, the culture. Find something that you find interesting in Korea, and let that be the gateway to other parts of Korea. For example, my friend, as I mentioned before, he had a Korean wife. He was really into basketball, and so he would make friends on the basketball court, Korean friends on the basketball court. And he didn't pretend he was Korean. He was naturally who he was. But then, because he was interested in other people and other players, they hung out and they got to know each other, and he made Korean friends. And that was his like stepping stool into other parts of Korean society. And I think that's the thing you gotta do. You can't be afraid to step out and really just really make friends. I think that's the most important thing. Is just make friends.
Yeah, you know your wife Jiang. She never lived abroad, but her English is excellent. It's native, right? It's like near native. But then also she's herself. You know, like she has she pursues her hobbies. She does her own thing. So I can kind of see that within her, right? So yeah, she worked really hard to reach kind of the level that where she is at now in terms of the way she speaks. But that is because she had a concrete goal, which is to travel and explore the world, and through language, that's what she wanted to do. Explore the world, broaden her mind, and to meet interesting people all over the world. So
yeah,
I think it's achievable to.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think motivation is probably maybe like 60% of the battles learning language. You gotta have the right motivation. And I think if you have the motivation just to pass a test or just because you want to get a promotion, of course you can learn it to a certain degree, enough to pass the test or enough to get that promotion. But if you really want fluency, you gotta really go beyond that. You have to go beyond just your those limitations and really try to more so, in a sense, have a broader vision for it. To why you want to use a language.
Yeah, and it has to be personal.
It has to be personal too. You have to really feel like this is something you really want to do.
Yeah, I say this to my students often. So they ask me, so how can I become a better speaker, right? And I hate that question, and because it's like saying, how can I become a better person? I mean, or I want to become a better speaker. Of course I want to become a better speaker. Of course I want to become a better person. But, that's like, of course, I want to eat more chocolates. So what I tell my students is to be more specific, right? So like when you can speak English fluently, like what's going to happen to you? How is that going to make you feel? So like really like find those words, keywords that's going to make like what is it about being able to speak English it's beneficial to you? So that whether that be being more confident. Okay. That's a good start, but confident when? With who? To be confident with other native speaker friends, or confident with my American girlfriend, or whatever. Or if it's if you're working at a company, then maybe you deal with foreign customers, so you want to make sure you can win the negotiation and get the best deal. That could be your goal, and which is fine. So I think once the goal is more specific, then I think you will know what steps to take to reach that goal. So that's one of the things I tell my students often. And of course, at the same time, if it's personal to you, if you have a bigger vision, then you're more likely to do it. Yeah, the motivation is half the battle.
Yeah, I feel like if you're gonna spend all this time and money learning English and just to pass a test, I mean, of course that's okay, but ideally, you should learn a language because you want to communicate. And that's unfortunate. I think a lot of Koreans don't understand that. They feel they want to be perfect, but at the same time, honestly, they just want to pass a test. And I think that's
the majority.
Yeah, I think that really.
It's not everybody.
It's not everybody. It's not everybody. I'm not saying it's everybody, but I feel that really limits their ability to really grasp the language.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Josh.
All right. Good luck with your business.
Yeah, you too.
Make lots of money.
Well,
help a lot of people.
We will see each other, of course, down the road again. And,
yeah, sure. And we'll do one of these videos again.
Yeah. Right. And I think my wife too. She will come on and she'll also explain how she learned Korean or how she learned English as well. You'll see her ability. She's really good. I was really impressed when I first met her. So.
Oh, if you guys live in Bucheon area, Bucheon시, and in Jungdong, there's a Lotte department store. If you live in this area, just leave a comment here and let us know, right? And maybe if you're interested in doing some more like a one-on-one tutoring, teaching, one-on-one lessons, then we can help. We can hook you up with Mitz.
Yeah, we'll help you out.
Yeah, so his office is located in Bucheon near Lotte department store. So if you are interested in one-on-one tutoring, leave your comments below.
All right, thank you guys.
All right, thank you guys.
Have a good one.
Bye.